Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. First of all, I would like to apologise for not posting last week. I've just had a really busy but exciting week and yeah, you'll definitely find out what I've been doing in the next few videos, but it's just been a bit hectic. But I've managed to produce a lot of cool videos and photos in the past few days, so that's all exciting news. But yeah, sorry for not posting. Back at it again now, and today I have got a very exciting video because I will be reviewing a camera. That camera is Lomography's Sprocket Rocket. So I thought I'd come back with another camera review. I've done quite a few now. I've done the Canon A1, a few point and shoots, the Yashica. All those will be on my channel, but today is a bit different because I actually got sent a camera by Lomography. So first of all, a big thank you to Lomography. They have not paid for me to say anything. They just sent me a camera for free. So everything I do say in this video will be completely my own opinion, but yeah, a big thank you to Lomography for sending me this camera and some film. As I mentioned, they sent me the camera, so I obviously sent it back, and rather stupidly, I filmed this video right now after I sent the camera back. So I haven't actually got it anymore to show you, but I've got plenty of clips of me using it, so I'll base this video off that. Lastly, I actually have done a short interview with Lomography about using this camera. The link will be in the description. It's not out yet, so when it gets released, I will update my description with the link, so make sure you come back and check that if it's not already there. It'll be a nice little interview where they ask me some questions, and then you'll see all the pictures I took with the camera. But with all that being said, let's actually kick off this video and talk about the camera. So onto the camera itself. The camera is a standard 35mm camera, although the trick up its sleeve is that it's a panoramic camera, so it shoots on 2 frames of film at once. So you get this ultra wide image. It's a standard 30mm plastic lens on the camera, but it's got a 106-degree field of view, so your image is absolutely massive. It has 2 aperture modes, which are little icons under the lens. One is a cloud, which is f10.8, and the other one is a sun, which is f16. So you basically follow the Sunny 16 rule for the aperture. And that's very easy to use. And then it has a fixed shutter speed of around 100th of a second. It also has a bulb mode, which I'll touch on a bit later on. The focusing is done with a range focusing system, so either a meter or under, or a meter and over. Basically, it's 2 settings on a focus ring, so that's all very easy to use and pretty accurate. The shutter itself is not a button like it is on most cameras. It's sort of more of a switch that you just flick up and down, which is probably my least favorite thing about this camera, to be completely honest. It's quite flimsy and easy to touch, and also if you were to do a long exposure with the bulb mode, it's just pretty hard to keep the camera steady when pressing that down because there's no hole or anything for a shutter release cable, obviously. The viewfinder is one of my favorite things. However, it is really bright, really big, obviously, because the image is big, but it's situated just above the lens. I'm not a big fan of off-centered viewfinders just because I switch so often between rangefinders and SLRs. I always forget to slightly fix the image because the viewfinder is off-centered. This one, however, is right above the lens, so it's pretty accurate when you line up your image. Loading the film is really easy. It's just like any other 35mm camera. What is really cool is when you wind your film, well, it's not locked to any other camera. You can wind or unwind whenever you want, really. So it's really easy to do double exposures or any cool tricks like that. When you wind your film, there's a little film counter so you know what you're shooting. On average, this camera can push between 16 and 18 frames from a 36 roll. And then there's little white dots. So when you've taken your image and you roll the dial, a little white dot will appear, and that means you're ready to shoot again. This I found was a bit unpredictable sometimes, just because the white dot, you sort of have to line it up perfectly with a little bit of glass, and a few of the frames I either got a double exposure or I ended up leaving way too much space on the film and not being able to get as many images as I maybe could have. But it is just something you have to get used to the more you shoot with this camera. And obviously rewinding the film is extremely easy as well. It's the little dial on the left and you just turn that like you would with any standard camera. You can also mount a flash with this camera, which is definitely one of my favorite things. All the images I got with the flash, which we'll get onto that later on, were all my favorite, and you could really get some ridiculously sharp photos. Keeping in mind this is a tiny plastic lens, it's actually way sharper than I anticipated. Now let's move on to some of the images. So I got this camera once a few months ago, maybe in March originally, and I got sent some Lomography color negative 800 film with it, and I had a real fun time using it, and I ended up sending the camera back, but I didn't get as many pictures as maybe I wanted to, so we agreed with Lomography that I could get a new one and try again. So they sent me a new one. This one was white, and I had a lot more fun using this one. I'd gotten used to the camera, and I'd learnt that you really always want to basically expose this film as much as you can. Always be on the 10.8 aperture and always just have as much light as you can, and that's why this time I decided to bring a flash. The reason for this is because your only apertures are f10.8 or f16 and 1/100th of a second shutter speed, and you can't really change it. Other than that, the images can be quite underexposed, so definitely shoot at least 400 ISO film. I would definitely go for 800 if you can, and always just film in nice natural daylight or nice controlled lighting. You don't really want to shoot this in a dark situation unless you have a flash or you want to be brave and try the long exposure. I went around Edinburgh with a roll of Ultramax 400 actually, but it was a really bright and sunny day and I thought this would be perfect. Once you use this camera a few times, you sort of work out which frames and which scenes work best. I always try to imagine it as if it was a film using maybe 70mm film or something like an anamorphic lens, just because I think that's what works best. It's not really going to be amazing, this camera, if you're taking portraits or close-ups, just because that's not what it's built for. It's built to get as much as you can into an image. So here is, for example, a picture I took here in Edinburgh. This is Arthur's Seat, a big old volcano we have in the centre of Edinburgh, and this, for example, is a perfect image for this camera, I find. I really like this shot. I like the leaves at the top of the composition. I think it nicely breaks the image, and yeah, I mean the colours are amazing in this photo, I find. And once again, just a really sharp, cool image that I wouldn't have been able to get with any lens that I've got for my other cameras. And here is a portrait that I took of Natalie. As you can see, she's rather small in the image, and that's just something you're gonna have to come to terms with this camera. It's not necessarily amazing for close-ups, but you can get some really cool portraits like this one if you incorporate the scene around the person. For this picture in particular, I actually had the flash, and I'm really glad I did. It nicely filled her out, but it also made the image really sharp. All these were scanned at home, and we'll get onto scanning in a bit, but bear in mind this isn't the highest res scan you can get. This was just scanned on a flatbed scanner, and I'm really impressed. I think this camera works best if you're walking around a city and you find a scene that you would never even think of trying to get with a standard lens or a standard camera. This is your time to be experimental and get some really cool shots. After a while, Natalie and I actually ended up going into a photo gallery we have here in Edinburgh, which was amazing, and there were these 3 TVs showing some pictures, which was amazing, and I thought this would be a great shot. Now, I had one with the flash here, and as you can see, it's still pretty underexposed. So as I was saying, in the low light situation, this camera doesn't necessarily perform that well unless you have a really high ISO film. If this was 800 ISO, I probably would have got a better image. That is just something to bear in mind, as I already said. This camera is just really fun to bring out. It's so light and it's really easy just to carry around, and it also gets people talking. It's just really cool to have something a bit different, and it's cool to have a company that's producing a new 35mm film camera that's slightly alternative and a bit different than just your standard point and shoots. Here's a picture I took by the sea, and this is my favorite thing to do with this camera, is to try and line up a nice symmetrical shot, as you can see here, of these 3 benches. I could never have got this with the other camera I had that day, which had a 50mm lens. It would just never have worked, but luckily it had the Sprocket Rocket, and that was really great. When it actually comes to scanning the film, I tried originally to get it scanned at a lab, but finding a lab that can scan panoramic film was a bit of a nightmare. I know in the UK, Analogue Wonderland do it, so you can ship it to them, but it will cost you a bit extra, and most labs it will cost you sometimes £5 to £10 or £20 more to scan panoramic film. So I decided just to scan them at home on my flatbed scanner, which I definitely would recommend if you can. You can just fit it inside the normal 35mm mats and it works perfectly. If you want to capture the sprockets, which is sort of the point of this camera, which is why it's called Sprocket Rocket, I would just lay it flat or put it in a 120 mat. That way you can capture the top and bottom of the frame fully. It's a bit harder to do that at home just because of white balance and all that, but it's definitely worth it, because if not, it can get a bit costly. And obviously developing this film is just standard C41 35mm, so nothing to worry about that. Having a camera that's a bit different than just my standard SLRs or my little point and shoots was just really exciting, and I'm definitely excited to use this camera again at some point in the future. I think bringing it to shoots along with a standard 35mm film camera would be very interesting. For example, my football games that I do. And it's cool just to be able to offer something very different to your client. Obviously, these pictures aren't the sharpest in the world. It's still 35mm, and it's a small plastic lens. You do have to bear that in mind. It's not a highly professional camera. But if you expose it well or you bring a flash with you, you can get some extremely sharp images. I was really blown away. So the pros of this camera are the price. It is very fairly priced. I'll say very cheap for what you're actually getting, and for a modern camera, really easy to carry around, really easy to use. If you're a beginner, this camera is really easy to learn and to pick up, so that is really fun, and also very easy to load and unload, and it's also so unique. You get amazing pictures that you just would never even imagine getting with a standard camera. The cons of this camera for me are the build can sometimes feel a bit flimsy. You do have to be careful with it. You can't just throw it around, obviously. And of course the shutter lever, as I've mentioned, I've always preferred a shutter button personally, but that is just me. Other than that, I think this camera is definitely worth looking at. I'd like to end this by saying a big thank you to Lomography once again for sending me this camera. The link for the camera will be in the description, as well as the interview that I've done with Lomography when it is out. You can also find my Instagram down there if you want to see some of the pictures and follow all the projects that I'm doing at the moment. There's some really exciting ones. I will now leave you on more of the pictures that I took with this camera, as well as a few clips. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week for a new video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.